Johnny Bench is tying it up. The Cincinnati Reds win the World Series in 4 straight. It was a sweep.
In the dirt, it's a wild pitch. Here comes Foster. The Reds win the pennant.
Perkins won the game.
That ball is fair. Cincinnati's ahead. 2 games to none.
Welcome Joe Aranda to Cincinnati. Adam Dunn has done it again.
Benzinger backing and calling. And the 1990 World Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds.
Marty, yes. This is Adam from Milwaukee. Hey, Adam, how you doing? I'm good. How are you? Good. Do you think Scott Hatteberg's a good player?
Dunn up there with the bases loaded, the outfield deep and around toward right, and the 1-0 on the way to the plate. Swung on, long drive, right field, and this one belongs to the Reds.
And a high drive, hit back into deep right field. Junior has just knocked the door down to the 500 club.
Benson's first home run is a walk-off winner. That ball had a family.
And De La Cruz is, oh my goodness, look at this kid run. My, oh my, that is a triple.
Matt McClain's first big league bomb.
Spencer Steer's first big league hit is a home run to straightaway center field. Joey Votto's done it again.
The pitch. Votto swings high in the air. Right field. Yes! He pointed to the dugout to say, I told you. That is Joey Votto's 315th career go-ahead ribby. Only Johnny Bench had more as a Red.
And I can't tell you how much it means to play in front of everyone here in Cincinnati as a Red. What a gift. What a tremendous gift. So thank you. Thank you.
I think I can speak for all of Reds country. Joey Votto, thank you.
High drive. Left center field. Racing back to the Laurel Bourgeois. The Reds are National League Central Division champions. In the air, left center field. Did he? He did! He did! Reds win! Win! Line into right field. Genius, the first Red ever. Wins 4 home runs in a game. Can you believe it? In the air, down the right field line. Doesn't have a chance. The Reds have won on a 3-run home run on opening day by Ramon Hernandez. A strike away and out away is Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first, and Homer Bailey, for the second time in his major league career, has tossed a no-hitter. Oh, gosh. Are you kidding me? Holy Moses, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air, and the Reds win. What a dream beginning to a career of Jay Bruce.
Well, hey, what's going on? Nick Kirby, Austin Layton. Welcome to a special edition on this Friday night of Chatterbox Reds. I wasn't planning on doing a show today, but it was just like news after news after news just kept coming in today about the Reds, and thought we'd break it all down, kind of talk a little bit about that. Austin, my friend, how you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, it's seemingly a lot of news in one afternoon, and we had to get on a stream, but I did not think that I'd be doing that on November 1st, but hey, here we are. I'll take it. Some news to talk about.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a busy month of November into December, and then it'll really kind of slow down. We'll, at the end, kind of run through the offseason calendar, what's ahead still. But before we get to all of that, if you are new watching, if you're watching on YouTube, that's the best place to watch us. Please like the stream. We'd really appreciate that. If you're watching us on Twitter or Instagram, thanks for tuning in. We do shows regularly. We have a podcast available as well, but jump on YouTube if you can. That's the best place. You can jump in our chat and hang out and have a good time. As always, Chatterbox Reds is proudly sponsored by Deep South Commodities. DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production. They specialize in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks as always to our friends at DSC. All right, so we're just going to kind of go through each and every piece of the news, give a little bit of input, and have any questions, go and throw those in the chat. The first one, the most popular player with news today was Nick Martinez. To absolutely no surprise, he declined his $12 million player option. Now, the Reds, they will be able, if they choose, to offer him a qualifying offer. That deadline is on Monday. The qualifying offer is a 1-year, $21 million contract, 1-year deal. And that's a way that the Reds can get something if they lose Martinez. So if the Reds offer Nick Martinez that 1-year, $21 million deal, and he declines that deal, if Martinez signs a deal with another club, the Reds will get a draft pick. Now, if that deal he signs is worth more than $50 million, the Reds get a pretty high draft pick. It's right after the first round picks. If it's less than $50 million, it's, I think, after the second round. Not as good, but still a very valuable pick. I've said all along, I believe the Reds will offer Nick Martinez a qualifying offer. I know $21 million is a lot, but it's a 1-year deal. 1-year deal. That's the most important thing. I wish the Reds had signed Jeimer Candelario to a more expensive 1-year deal than a 3-year deal. Because so what? If it was an extra $5 million to get him on 1 year, you're done with the contract. If it ends up not working out, it's 1 year. It doesn't kill you. I think it's a no-brainer to offer Nick Martinez the qualifying offer. Will he accept? I don't know. I'd probably put it almost close to 50-50. Where do you stand, Austin?
Yeah, I think they should, for a variety of reasons. One, I mean, if you look at his production just last year and how useful he was to the Reds coming out of the bullpen and then ultimately more of a starter role towards the end of the year. I mean, with the question marks that we have with our pitching kind of health every year seemingly now, I think it would make a lot of sense to keep a guy like Nick Martinez on the roster. But then, yeah, also what you were talking about with the draft picks. I mean, it would kind of stink to not only lose Nick Martinez, but then get literally nothing in return. And the qualifying offer is a way to basically do that, to get something in return if he does go elsewhere. So I don't know. The $20 million, like you said, it's 1 year. This club's going to have to spend some money if we want to be competitive. I think you could do a lot worse than Nick Martinez. So I think there's not a lot of downside into extending the offer. Worst case, I guess, if you're the Reds, like if you're viewing him assigning that as the negative, like, I mean, it's still a pretty good outcome, I would say. So I'm for it. Just how much we depended on him last year, and I think he actually performed pretty well too. So I'd be here for it.
Yeah, I don't really think I'm actually all that interested in Nick Martinez if he declines the qualifying offer, because if we know he wants more than that and he wants more years, I think I'm less interested in Martinez for years than dollars, just because he is 34 years old. I think there's a good chance he can be an effective pitcher for 1 more year, but you start going further than that, it becomes riskier and riskier. So yeah, I think this is, to me, is a no-brainer. And it became even more of a no-brainer because of the next piece of news, and that was that Jakob Junis declined his $8 million player option. Junis would have got Junis had a $3 million buyout, and I think if the Reds it would certainly have picked up his option. It's kind of wild how quickly he rose through the Reds, because I remember when the Reds made that trade, it was all about Joey Wiemer, and Joey Wiemer didn't perform very well in the minor leagues, but I think still has some potential. He could stay in the minor leagues next year. I think that was still the cornerstone piece of that deal. But Junis almost pitched too well. Like Junis almost was too good for the Reds in September to think he's worth more than $8 million. And, with all the uncertainty about free agents, and we'll talk about that at the end. I know we had a question in the chat already about that with the RSN deals. I think Junis feels very confident he can get more. I don't think Junis is a qualifying offer candidate. I don't think he's close to $21 million. But I would be more interested, Austin, in a multi-year deal with Junis, 2 or 3 years, than I would be a multi-year deal with Martinez, even though I like Martinez more for just 2025.
Yeah, and you gotta like what you saw out of Junis towards the end of last year. And just pulling up quick numbers, he had a career best year between Milwaukee and Cincinnati last season, 2.69 ERA. I mean, yeah, the Reds, they heavily relied on him towards the end of last year, but I think, as we go forward, I think if I had to project it out, Martinez would probably be more expensive over the long term too, compared to Junis, at least at this point in their careers. So I think it's kind of not necessarily risk, but like a less risk with Junis. And, you know, you struggle to put a lot of faith, I guess, behind guys that suddenly have a career year, but he seems to be a guy that's kind of trending in the right direction rather than it just being like a fluke, one-off year, things like that. So, yeah, I that one was kind of the one that hurt, maybe the most to me. I didn't want to lose Nick Martinez either, but I thought Junis was at least, could fit in pretty well with this team and be a productive member moving forward.
Yeah, I thought there was a chance he would just go ahead and pick that up, but certainly must think he get more in the market. And this is a guy that really has just gotten better and better every year. His ERA in 2020 was in the 6s. Then he got it down in the 5s in 2021, down in the 4s in 2022, 2023 down 3.87, and then this year, as you mentioned, a career year. I think he's got a pretty decent track record. He's had a lot of injuries. That's the big thing. But the reason that he's probably going to be in the Reds budget is because he's had a lot of injuries. So I would be all for it if you could work out a 2-3 year deal for Junis. It's not too crazy. I think he's a really nice option, can start, can relief. And look, if you don't sign Junis and if Junis Martinez are walk out the door, I'm telling you, the Reds need to get some pitching. I'll go and say this right now, and I know people are going to hate me for it, and that's fine. If the Reds lose both Martinez and Junis, it is more important for this team to get pitching than it is offense. I fully believe that. And I know everyone watched this team last year and how poorly the offense performed at times, but you've already lost Brandon Williamson for the year. You've already lost Julian Aguilar. That's 4 starting pitchers at one point in 2025. There's not enough pitching depth. So the Reds are going to have to add either these guys or someone else.
Yeah, or they're going to have to rely on guys like Tony Santillan to kind of fill kind of those leverage roles in the bullpen that, I think he's capable of, but it's just one of those things that's never been consistently proven with guys like that. I mean, they're seemingly losing the guys that we were pretty much going to rely on to be kind of their workhorses, at least in a couple different pitching facets. So it's kind of day one almost of free agency and whatnot, but we'll kind of see how it goes.
Yeah. The other option, this was the Reds chose to decline it. They decided to part ways with Luke Maile. The Reds will pay him a $500,000 buyout. Luke Maile had a $3.5 million option for 2025. I don't know if I was surprised by this. I kind of thought this was maybe a 50-50 choice. I thought Luke Maile did play for Terry Francona in 2022. So he had some familiarity there. I know he's well liked in the clubhouse. I know he's viewed as a leader, but just did not perform well. I'm not going to say, though, this is for sure the end of Luke Maile. I wouldn't be completely shocked if Luke Maile goes out on the free agent market, doesn't find what he's looking for. The Reds either offer him the bare minimum major league deal or maybe one of those they did it, I think, with Austin Wynns. It was like a split deal. I don't know the exact logistics of it, but you can have the option of getting sent down to the minors, but in your deal, you get a certain amount of money if you play in the majors. I could see something like that happening with Luke Maile, but I think overall this is the right decision. There's not a great catching market out there this offseason. Not that I necessarily think the Reds would go too deep into it. Something that I think would be fascinating to watch is if another team has a player that they do not catcher that they do not protect in the Rule 5 draft. I could see the Reds trying to claim a catcher in the Rule 5 draft if there's someone that's close to the big leagues to be a backup for Tyler Stevenson. That might be a sneaky way to get a catcher. And the Reds actually almost did this. You might remember a couple years ago, the Reds picked up Blake Sabol in the Rule 5 draft. It looked like he was a guy that they were going to get. He was a catcher, but he also could play the outfield. The Reds ended up trading him to the Giants. They traded their pick, and then Blake Sable actually ended up becoming a big leaguer. But I could see the Reds doing something like that and getting a catcher. So that'll be something interesting to watch. Any thoughts on Luke Maile? At this point, we think being done in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think the Reds, if you asked me 2 years ago, after Tyler Stevenson kind of went through his struggles and whatnot, I think, I would have valued Maile as more of a valuable option. Now, hopefully this trend continues, right? But I think Stevenson had a really good year last year, and I think he kind of made the case for himself to get a majority of the playing time, and be kind of that heavily relied on guy. They kind of stopped using him at first base like they experimented with a few years back, things like that. So I think it seems like they're going in the direction of making him almost no positions every day anymore, but essentially their everyday catcher. And it, to your point, yeah, I mean, if Maile's not back, and production wise, it's okay. He batted, under 200 last year and really didn't have a great year. So production wise, I think you could get kind of the equivalent or better off of maybe a free agent or even a young guy. I know the Reds minor league catching, situation has kind of been pretty wild the past couple of years. Chucky Robinson was in there, left. We brought Tucker Barnhart back last year, towards the end of last year. So other than that, I mean, they don't really have any solid options. Wynns came up, I know, and seemingly hit like a double every time he was at bat for like a week, it seemed like. But I just don't think you can rely on. He's more of a defensive guy in my mind, but I think it ultimately for Maile came down to kind of money for the production that you're getting, and they probably just didn't see that it worked out as far as how they were balancing their checkbook so far.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly find a defensive leader type guy for catcher for that amount of money. And you might even be able to get Luke Maile back for a lot cheaper. So we'll see on that. I know a guy that is pretty high on the Reds in terms of a guy they really love is Michael Trotwine. I know we actually got, I don't think it was necessarily demotion last year. I think it was more of a moving guys around. He got sent down to Double-A late in the year. I think that was to maybe help with some pitchers down there. But I know he had a really bad year offensively. But he is a guy that everyone I've ever talked to in the organization loves him. They rave about him. Kind of maybe has that like Tucker Barnhart type vibes. Is a guy that's kind of rising through the system. He is Rule 5 eligible, so we might find out very soon if the Reds believe in Trotwine or not. If they decide to put him on the 40-man roster or not. I guess the only kind of, I don't necessarily think anything today was necessarily like a terrible thing, but the most positive thing was Brent Suter. He will be coming back to the Reds. He was actually still under contract. So a really interesting situation. I'll try to break it down here the best I can. So Suter reworked his deal with the Reds. So the Reds actually declined Suter's $3.5 million option for 2025. But they paid him a $500,000 buyout. And then he signed a new deal for $2.25 million in 2025 with a $3 million option for 2026. So essentially, if I'm doing the math right, I think he lost about $500,000 in this total thing, but he got himself an extra year. I think this is just a guy that doesn't want to go out in the free agent market, doesn't think he's going to probably get much more, loves playing in Cincinnati, is from here, obviously, and, just says, look, I'm not messing around. Let's get a deal done. And I like Suter a lot, especially when you're potentially losing Martinez and Junis. Suter's biggest value is just the fact that he is a rubber arm, can go out there, give you 3 innings at a time, but can also come in some higher leverage spots and be somewhat effective. So I think this is great that the Reds were able to keep him. I think you always need a couple of these guys at the back end of your bullpen.
Yeah, and looking back on it, I don't know if it's just because I have like the all the visions of him doing like impressions on Reds Live and things like that before and after the games. Like I always thought he just kind of like a goofy guy, like, had an okay year, but looking back at his stats, I mean, he had a 3.15 ERA. I mean, he was a good pitcher, to your point, super reliable. I think even towards the end of the year, he was pitching pretty hurt from what I remember. But so I think, to your point, the importance on Suter raises as you lose guys like, Martinez and Junis to some extent, for the bullpen role at least. But so I think, it's a guy that you almost had to bring back if you're going to lose some of these guys. And it's not, for a super expensive amount. So I'll take that. And yeah, to your point, Cincinnati guy, maybe that gives him a couple points off the ERA. Hopefully we'll see, over the course of the year. But you got to love it for the clubhouse. He seems like a good dude from all accounts. And I think, I could see him being more heavily relied on, at least on this current roster, that seventh inning type range, things like that, where, not necessarily going to probably be our setup guy or a closer, but, definitely a veteran at this point on the team. Do you think that they'll kind of leverage him later in the games, or is it going to be more of like a midway to the bullpen type scenario that you envision?
Oh, I think he's going to be even more of a long man. I think the Reds are probably going to expand upon that role, especially with the Buck Farmer's a free agent right now. I wouldn't put it past the Reds to bring Buck Farmer back. They've done it before. I know Buck's kind of another one of those guys, but I mean, like Farmer, Martinez, Junis, and Suter, those were the four guys that protected the Reds bullpen so well. And those innings are going to be hard to replace. So yeah, I think they do that more, but Suter's just, you look at his career numbers. I mean, he's gone over 500 career innings and has a 3.45 career ERA. He's only had 1 year in his entire big league career where he had an ERA above 4, and that was in 2018 when he was used as a starter, and it was still like a 4.44 ERA. So, I do think with Suter, if you tried to stick him in the 8th inning, I think that ERA would go up quite a bit. I do think he capitalizes on a lot of the innings that he does. And maybe I'm not really being fair to him, but I do feel like, he's eating a lot of innings and he's really able to thrive in that role. But that role is in itself is very important too. And, look, there's games where you might be down 4 or 5 runs. You bring in Suter and he puts up a couple zeros, and it may not feel like much. But then if you come back, those innings do become valuable. And hopefully that the team has a few more of those next year.
Yeah, ideally the offense is clicking high enough that we don't, need him to kind of save the middle of the game for us, or just kill clock for lack of a better term. But I think he'll be used. That does make sense in the long-term relief kind of guy. I think at this point the roster is going to move so much that we really don't know roles just yet. So I could see it going a few ways, but yeah, glad to have him back. That's for sure.
All right, several other moves. We'll get to those here in just a second. But as always, we want to remind you that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health, whether it's immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between. It's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay. And as always, 988. Austin, I kind of felt like New York Yankees fans watching that 5th inning. Like they just needed to put 988 all across the screen during that game in Game 5. Have you ever seen anything? Have you ever seen anything like that inning in that kind of spot?
Yeah, not in that kind of spot, but yeah, watching Reds games, I feel like we've seen some innings like that in the past. But yeah, unfortunately, but no, I mean, that game was nuts. The Dodgers, or they went up 5-0. The Dodgers ultimately came back, and I had given up on the game. I was doing stuff around the house at the time, and I was like, turn this off. It's 5-0. Came back, it was tied. My buddy had texted me about it, so I just to see that collapse too. And I'm not a huge Anthony Rizzo fan anyway, so that was okay with me. But yeah, I mean, Yankees fans definitely not loving it.
I mean, what a wild series, because I was kind of thinking back to it, like the series ends in 5 with the Dodgers, but it so easily could have been a 3-2 Yankees lead going back to Dodger Stadium, because the Yankees led in the ninth inning of game 1 and then had a 5-run lead in game 5. I mean, he just flipped those two results. The Yankees would have had a 3-2 lead going into Dodger Stadium. That's why, man, the playoffs, it is such the margin of advancing and not, it's so thin. That's why I try not to put too much like stock into what do you do in the playoffs. I know a lot of people will say, small market team hasn't won a World Series. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I get that, but the Guardians were, 1 run away from winning a World Series, and it's really such a crapshoot. But overall, one of the more exciting 5-game World Series, maybe the most exciting 5-game World Series, at least that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it was great for baseball at least because you had two of the biggest brands that they could have possibly put in there. I think the East Coast West Coast kind of rivalry was a cool element of it. You got guys like Ice Cube and Fat Joe doing rap concerts before the game on the field, things like that. So I don't know. I think like overall, just watching it as a baseball fan, I think it was an awesome World Series just for pure entertainment purposes. And it was one of the first times in a long time that I've like watched, the World Series and thought like, man, this is actually pretty cool. Baseball's doing a good job and like, seemingly getting some traction on the, daily talk shows and social media and things like that. So I think, they have to be loving it from a ratings aspect, but as a fan too, it was a lot of fun to watch as well.
Yeah, looking forward
Just
to
don't do
seeing
what the
Ellie
Yankees fans did when they grabbed Mookie Betts. That was nuts.
Yeah, there was so many just wild things in that series. But yeah, looking forward to watching Ellie De La Cruz play in the series next year. All right, continuing on with the Reds news. This one caught me a little bit off guard. Reds 2020 second-round pick Christian Roa claimed off waivers by the Miami Marlins. Roa's been a guy that I've really liked for a long time. This one probably hurts me more than most Reds fans, I'm assuming. I liked Roa. He had a really good slider. He just twofold. He's just been hurt a lot, and he's really struggled with his command. But man, when he command his pitchers, he has some real talent. From the Reds' perspective, I can't really get upset about losing him, especially when you're trying to compete next year and you're trying to maximize your spots. If I was a Marlins fan, I'd be thrilled that I picked up a guy like Christian Roa for nothing. I do think he's got some talent. I think the Reds were kind of he was on the 60-day IL. I think the Reds were kind of hoping to sneak him through waivers, given that every team's kind of in this roster crunch right now when you have to take guys off the 60-day IL as soon as the World Series ends. But the Marlins, I think, would have been right at the top of the waiver claim list. So I don't think they stuck him very far. So that kind of shows you what, Roa potentially had value-wise. But, yeah, stinks to lose him. That 2020 draft, man, if there's a year that you get a pass, it's 2020 just because of the incredible challenges of trying to draft when you can't, go scout players in person. But, wow, what a whiff. It only went 5 rounds. First player, Austin Hendrick. We know about Austin Hendrick. It has not gone well for him. At least he's still in the organization because no one else is in that top 5. There's a player that had legal troubles is out of baseball. There's a player that retired in that. Another player that the Reds just straight up cut that's in, I think, the Red Sox organization. The best thing in the Reds got going for them is Sam Mole back for the 5th-round pick, Joe Boyle. And should also mention, Reds did sign Carson Spires and Hurtubise as non-drafted free agents in that short draft. But nonetheless, not a good draft. Hopefully everything else after that is much better. And by all accounts, it does look a lot better. All right, continuing on here, Austin. Ty France, DFA'd and elected free agency. Probably the other biggest storyline of the day was Ty France, a guy that I liked. Austin, I don't know if I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid too much, but I really believe in Christian Encarnacion Strand so much. I'm going to die on the hill that Christian Encarnacion Strand is a big leaguer, that he should be on the opening day roster. And when if you have the belief in Christian Encarnacion Strand, it really kind of becomes hard to see where you get Ty France at bats when you have Jamer Candelario, you have India and Steer that are kind of this no man position list, and France was going to be owed like $8 million. I don't know. This was a tough one, but I think I'm on the right side here with letting France go. I wouldn't be against, though, trying to sign him back on a shorter deal.
Yeah, I think to your point, they've got a lot of guys that I think are vying for that position right now. And then, at 8+ million or whatever he would have potentially gotten, I just don't see that being worth it for the Reds. And Ty France, I mean, he seemingly had his better years kind of in the past. I know recently he hasn't kind of performed up to his career average. So you know, I just didn't see it working out with that price tag to your point. I mean, if you look at CES, what's the backstory on CES? He killed it in the minors and, came up and had a pretty good year 2 years ago. Last year, he had a down year, but, by all accounts that we've heard, it's basically because he was injured the entire time. So if he can get a full, healthy season to kind of see, if he's good, if he earns that spot in the lineup that way, I think, you just have a lot of that he still has to prove and kind of show the organization, and they're going to let that play out in the field, it seems like, and save themselves about $8 million in the process.
Yeah, I CES only played 29 games last year. I mean, he played 29 games. He was hurt for some of them. I mean, in the 63 games the year before, everyone loved him. He hit 270, right. 805 OPS. I mean, I'm going to read these numbers for you. His minor league career, Christian Encarnacion Strand's minor league career, 211 games. He hit 322 with a 990 OPS in 211 minor league games. Let's look at some other players. What did they do in the minor leagues? Elly De La Cruz hit 298 with a 908 OPS. Okay. Matt McClain, what did he do in the minor leagues? He hit 266 with a 901 OPS. What about Spencer Steer? What did he do in the minor leagues? 268 average with an 846 OPS. Give Christian Encarnacion Strand some time, okay? Give him a pass on 29 games. 29 games. I believe in Christian Encarnacion Strand. I think he has a chance to be the Reds' best hitter, and that includes Elly De La Cruz in 2025. I'm going to die on that hill.
Yeah, I mean, all the reports of him coming up through the minors was the guy has just ridiculous power, kind of that middle of the lineup type of guy, what you probably want out of your first baseman, obviously. So they're going to let that play out. I think it seems, to be a move that I agree with. So hope it works out. But no, I think, just looking at his numbers and kind of his trajectory, I think, you can't fault him for 29 games where he's played hurt for a decent portion of it.
Yeah. So Saranara to Ty France. Did enjoy him. I enjoyed his time. It was definitely kind of a breath of fresh air from a lineup that just really struggled. Wish the Reds overall would have played better, and that would have kind of been a really nice signing that we could have been talking about for years to come. How that was the spark, but wasn't in the cards. Nick Martini, DFA'd. I don't think this was much of a surprise. I really liked Nick Martini. I thought he was a fun player. Obviously, had that great moment on opening day. Stinks for a guy like Martini. Man, it's tough, with some of these players, just when you get hurt. Like, what a brutal year for him to get hurt, because he would have got a chance to play every day all summer. And for a guy that's kind of bounced around, went overseas to play baseball, he really kind of just, unfortunately, the injury cost him a chance. But, I also can't fault him. I also would not be completely surprised if Martini found his way back to the Reds somehow, though, on a minor league deal.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I think, he was always one of those guys that seemingly just had the clutch gene, especially in 2023, where he would come in late in the games and just, hit one out of the park. But last year, to your point, opening day was kind of a highlight. And, going through my 162 Rolodex, and I can't really think of too many other Nick Martini highlights off the top of the head, at least. But no, I just, it's another one of those guys that, not terrible, but, you could just see not necessarily fitting in with their kind of future plans too. So I'll miss the Chris Welsh, Martini calls every time he hit one out. But other than that, we'll see how it plays out, I guess.
It's a big moment in September 2023. And if that team would have snuck in the playoffs, I mean, he had some massive home runs that month. So But yeah, best of luck to Nick Martini. I really did like him. I thought he was a fun player. I liked his energy, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, can't fault the Reds there. And then the last ones, really no surprise here. Tejay Antone and Austin Wynns, both DFA'd. Good news, though, for the Reds is both players accepted an assignment to AAA. It's great to see Tejay Antone still in the Reds organization. Obviously, you can't hold a 40-man roster spot for Tejay Antone to be completely honest, as brutal as it might sound, there's no guarantee he's ever even going to pitch again, or at least pitch again effectively. But I'm really glad he stayed in the organization because there's no one that kind of, you root for more than a guy like Tejay Antone. Austin Wynns seems like really nice catcher depth as well. Good to have him. I'd be curious to know what the Reds maybe told Austin Wynns if they said, hey, we would like to keep you. If you accept the assignment down to AAA, we're going to make you our number 3 organizational catcher, or something like that, if you got some sort of guarantee there. But really, no surprises with either of those two guys.
Yeah, I agree. And for Wins, I think it either had to be that message or he just kind of figured, this is my best shot, maybe, to our, discussion earlier. But he probably just saw Luke leave and then see, hey, like, maybe I get hot in spring training and I make the opening day roster as the backup catcher, which isn't out of the question, I don't think, barring a free agent signing. But yeah, that to me, I think, not really surprising moves there. I think, we could certainly do better, than that. I don't know if that's going to be necessarily they're going to, wipe their hands clean and say, all right, we got our catching situation figured out. But at the same time, it's at least like a guy with some big league experience and depth, for the roster too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're the number 3 guy, like in an organization, I mean, there's always a chance someone gets hurt in spring training, especially with catchers. I mean, you're the number 3 guy in an organization. I mean, you're going to get called up at some point. I mean, it's really, you're waiting for someone to get hurt because catchers are going to get hurt, kind of as we go along. But Austin, before we move on, any final thoughts on any of the moves today, the plethora of moves here on November 1st?
Nothing that we didn't already hit on. I think it is kind of interesting how it plays out because you basically know that these kind of were in the works and they were just waiting on the World Series to end to some extent to kind of get the ball rolling. But no, I mean, it's exciting, I guess, to see some movement and kind of just get some clarity on guys that, we knew were either kind of, maybe coming back, maybe not. I know we're still waiting on what Pagan is kind of the main one that they're still, I guess, something I saw that they're thinking about taking that option, or he is at least. So that would kind of solidify the bullpen. But I think, the moves we saw today, nothing too surprising. It stinks to lose a guy like Maile, but I think he's a pretty good guy all around. Obviously, being from the Cincinnati area is always cool to watch. But no, other than that, nothing else. The only other thing I did see that was interesting, at least for some Reds fans, it looks like Eugenio Suarez is supposed to get his option, I guess, picked up according to the Twitterverse. So, and nothing official yet, I don't think. But for Reds fans that were maybe hoping to see him back at third base, doesn't look like we'll get a chance. But good luck to Gino out there, I guess.
I'm on to a trade for Alec Bohm. I'm moving on. Yeah, and thanks for mentioning Pagan. I don't think there's any way he declines that option. I after the kind of year he had, if he does, cool. I mean, I'm not gonna lose any sleep. I don't think he's a bad pitcher to have. I don't know if I'd sign him right now for a 1-year, $8 million deal. So if he declines that, okay, good luck to you. If he accepts it, okay, yeah, we're glad to have another decent arm in the bullpen. That's kind of where I'm at with Pagan. We're looking ahead here to the kind of the off-season calendar. As mentioned earlier, the deadline for qualifying offers is Monday, November 4th. So we would expect there'll be news on Nick Martinez. Martinez is the only player that the Reds would be tracking. It'll be interesting to see, though, other players in terms of, across the league, who's getting qualifying offers, because players that get qualifying offers obviously become less attractive to the Reds because they have to lose a draft pick to sign them. So that'll be kind of something to track. The GM meetings also start on Monday in Texas. Nothing typically happens from that, but you never know. When you get GMs talking, maybe something gets in the works. I think typically it's more of like laying the groundwork for future stuff, like when the winter meetings, but that's something to watch. And then there's a long gap. The qualifying offer deadline for players to choose if they're going to accept or not is November 19th. So you have like 15 days that they get to make that decision, which is kind of wild because when player declines the option, you only have 5 days to make that decision, but the player gets 15. So that also on November 19th is the Rule 5 protection deadline. When we get a little closer to that, gonna have a full show with some minor league guys where we kind of break down all the players and the options of who might the Reds be looking to keep versus not, kind of debate some of that. Kind of watching that. And as I mentioned, I think a decent chance the Reds might try to pick someone up in the Rule 5 draft. And then November 22nd is the non-tender deadline. So that's where the Reds will have to make more decisions on players if they want to, offer them arbitration next year or not. But we did get a question in here that I wanted to get to, Austin. And we kind of talked about it a little bit on our show the other day, talking about the FanDuel Sports Network and the Reds and Diamond and all that. Alex asked, do you think the RSNs will affect when players sign? I'm wondering if the winter will move fast because big money could dry up. I don't know if it'll move fast or not. I mean, it's always possible. I don't know. The reports, Mark Sheldon, just kind of the latest on this. Mark Sheldon reported that the Reds seem unlikely to sign any big contracts this offseason. Gordon Whitmire reported, this wasn't just about the Reds, but all the players that are impacted by the RSN, and the Reds likely, we think, losing FanDuel Sports Network and going to an alternate plan, that those teams are going to cut 20 to 50% of their payroll. So I don't know. I hope the Reds are kind of the team that bucks that trend. And honestly, this offseason probably should adjust a little bit of our expectations. I mean, I think if the Reds just kept their payroll at 110 million, that might be a lot better than other teams that have these RSN deals. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's definitely going to be a big cloud over this entire offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't see how it wouldn't impact it. You know what I mean? It's if teams are kind of waiting to see how much money they're going to be making off their TV deals, which is going to directly probably impact their balance sheet and everything else. I think there's got to be some uncertainty. And things we see kind of from comments from the team, maybe they won't acknowledge it and kind of say, we're still working through our budget and things like that. I think I saw a comment from Crawl maybe earlier this week or today. So I think it's going to certainly impact it. You hope it doesn't impact it negatively too much because, as we've talked on previous shows too, the Reds kind of need to make some moves, we think, in the free agent, market and sign some guys. So obviously the biggest budget they have to do that, the better. And going back to the winter, the GM meetings for a bit, was it last year? I don't know if you remember this story. It was at the GM meetings, I want to say, that something broke out where they all got food poisoning and a stomach virus, and it was so bad they had to cancel the GM meetings. Do you remember hearing about that?
I think I vaguely do now that you bring that up. So yeah, that is hopefully that doesn't happen again. But as it, just to kind of give people an idea of where the Reds are at, because I know when I say cutting payroll, people are like, what are we doing here? The latest projection from Spot Track, which I think does probably the best of this, has the Reds payroll as it currently stands with their projected arbitration at $38.7 million. Now the Reds ended 2024, and I think they actually cut a little bit at $100 million. So I still think the Reds have $60 million here to kind of play with. Now that's, of course, down at the $38 million. That's not including a Nick Martinez deal. That's not including Jakob Junis anymore. So there is some room there. I don't know. Sheldon's wording to me was kind of interesting, where he said no big deals. Does that? I don't know what that means. You know, I don't know if that just means like don't expect the Reds to go sign like a 3-year, $60 million contract, but they're still probably going to make a bunch of smaller ones. I don't really know. I said it before. I think the Reds are going to be very active in the trade market. I think there's going to be a lot of trades this offseason. I would certainly prefer the Reds just go out and sign a bunch of free agents that they don't have to give anything up for. But that's what I expect will happen, is there's going to be a lot of trades.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird comment to make this early too. If you're, the Sheldon comment, not that saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm sure he's got great sources, but it's just like it's so early at this point, and maybe he's just ruling out, somebody signing like a Soto size contract. Which I honestly I hope the Reds don't make a deal like that for basically anybody, just because it would cripple them, financially for years. But so I don't know what to make of it at this point, but you'd like to think that the Reds are still going to be pretty aggressive. And, Kral's had some history of making some decent moves. So I have some trust that they'll still, push forward for this year. Cause I like we talked, they seemingly know the window's here, not that we want to do the window talk, but the window's here and it's opening, and, it might not be here forever.
I would take Soto. I don't really care about what that does. He's so young that I think he's kind of a unicorn. I just don't think he has any interest in signing in Cincinnati. So, but no, I would sign him. Honestly, I totally support paying that much, even if the Reds have to keep their payroll the same. I think you could fit Soto into a payroll that's 120, 130 million every year. I don't really like Anthony Santander. I know everyone is in love with Anthony Santander. He's another bad defensive player that's coming off a career year. Look at some of his numbers the years before. That's the kind of player that I think can be that contract that you're talking about that doesn't age well and that cripples you. So I don't really like Santander. I just think he's going to be way too expensive. I think you could like, just to put it this way, if Santander is 5 years, 100 million, I think you could spend that 100 million a lot better in getting multiple players than Santander.
Yeah, he seems to be kind of the hot outfielder at this point, or at least maybe even like starting a couple weeks ago, as kind of the free agent market was getting pieced together. But yeah, I agree with you. It seems like it's almost like an overspend for what he would be for this team. But and in all likelihood, hopefully they prove me wrong. I just don't see the Reds making a move like that either, just based on
when you're a guy that hits 44 home runs and you still only have a 129 WRC plus. That's hard to do, man. Only being 29% better and hitting 44 home runs. I mean, he only had a 308 on base percentage. That to me just screams a guy that if the power slumps for a while is going to be a very expensive DH. And he can't play defense. This will be another player that can't play defense. Now, look, if the Reds went and signed Anthony Santander tomorrow, I would be ecstatic. Like, he would be obviously a massive upgrade for the Reds in 2025. But I think the long-term ramifications, if you don't win a World Series in 2025, would not be good for the Reds. That's mine. Trade targets. Alex asked about that. Alec Boehm is certainly up there. If the Phillies are out on him, I think he would fit a lot out in third base. I haven't dug a whole lot more. I know Boehm was one. Jordan Montgomery, if the Reds could get the Diamondbacks to eat some of that money, love to take a shot on a guy like him that could potentially bounce back. The Cardinals, man, I don't know if the Cardinals will be able to deal with the Reds. I love Sonny Gray. I think we had already discussed a potential, swapping the Candelario contract. Maybe the Reds throw in a prospect. Nolan Arenado, I think he's washed, but he can still play really good defense at third base. If you could get them to eat some of that deal, I think he would be a guy that would make sense if the Reds, I don't want to say can't afford it, because I know they can't afford it, but if they will afford it, I guess is the better way to say it. I don't know. Have you thought of any other trade targets?
I honestly haven't come through like names as much. I think for me, it's more position based. The biggest target I have is somebody to help their rotation at this point. I think that's kind of the way that I'd like to see them, if they're going to make some moves, kind of shore that up. I know we got a lot of guys that are going to be healthy for opening day, but you just don't know how long they're going to last with guys like Lodolo and Abbott just kind of running through some injury issues in the past, and even guys like Ashcraft that are kind of filling out those, end of the rotation roles. So I'd like to see I'd like to see a starting pitcher there, but yeah, to your point, maybe a corner outfielder too. I think, center field we could kind of have covered with, Friedel, and we don't have to get into this now, but Matt McClain playing center field in the Arizona Fall League. But to me, it'd be an offensive bat, in one of the corner outfield positions or a starting pitcher.
I know a lot of people said Josh Naylor. Again, I need someone that could play defense at a somewhat premium position. That's where if you're giving up prospects or you're putting a lot of money into it, the Reds defense is just atrocious, and it's been absolutely terrible. That's where I think you have to find some improvement. I'm kind of looking down the list. Christian Vasquez with the Twins, a catcher, is a potential guy that I think could maybe be an option to kind of be a backup. Guy's had a pretty decent career. A guy that I kind of like is Mike Yastrzemski. He's kind of been hurt a lot. He could maybe be a potential. He's a guy that could maybe have a big GABP boost. I'm just seeing him on a list here. I'm just kind of going down. Honestly, though, like literally the Cardinals, they're the perfect team for picking. And I just don't know how willing they are to move. Chas McCormick of the Astros, another guy that I think maybe goes on that list. That's probably, most of the top guys that I'm thinking about. Obviously, Luis Robert, I know everyone mentions him. Certainly would be all for that. I just don't understand from the White Sox perspective why the hell they would trade Luis Robert right now and not keep him and see if he can have a monster first half and then flip him at the deadline. Because it's not like the White Sox are, hey, let's get a nice return from Luis Robert and we're right back to competing. They need a lot. So, I would rather, if I was them, I would be risky. I would risk and try to keep him and see if he can just get hot for a half of baseball, and his value could skyrocket. I mean, because if Luis Robert plays like an all-star for a half, I mean, his trade return is going to be through the roof.
Yeah, and I'm coming through some lists now just to kind of see, names that are out there. One that does intrigue me, and I don't know if the Reds would ever be able to pull this off, but Teoscar Hernandez. I think that guy, I mean, just watching him through the playoffs was a lot of fun. So I don't know. I think he's a free agent after this year, if I remember right. Is he?
He is, but that guy signed a 1-year deal with the Dodgers when he clearly could have got, just I think he's going to want to sign back with the Dodgers. And so, yeah, sure. I mean, I would be all for that. I was for that last year. But then he signed a deal. A guy that I just saw that's interesting. He was the last name on this MLB trade rumors list. Bo Bichette. What if you got a guy like Bo Bichette? He had a terrible year last year. So you obviously are hoping he bounces back. But he had, he 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 well above average seasons before that. What if you got a guy like him and you either moved him to third base or second base? It kind of reminds me of Marcus Semien. Was kind of a slightly below average defensive player at shortstop. Goes to the Blue Jays first, I think it was. They played him mostly at second base, and his defensive numbers went through the roof. I wonder if Bo Bichette could kind of become that guy. He's still owed. He's on his last year. Still owed $16 million. So I don't think he's going to be necessarily like one of the craziest trade returns that you're going to have to give up for. But Bo Bichette is an interesting name to me that I don't know if you could pull that off, but that's the kind of player that could really, really change this lineup and maybe defensively if he can play significantly better at a less difficult position.
Yeah, I think he would fit in with kind of the personality of this team pretty well too. And he's a Reds legacy, right? His dad, Dante Bichette, back in the day, briefly with
Yeah,
the
there you
Reds. So,
go. There you
hey,
go.
I'm just connecting all the dots. You heard it here first, but no, I think that would be cool. I don't know if it necessarily will happen, but I'd be all for it. I think he would bring some spark to this team.
You seen in the chat, Tyler O'Neill. That's my number one free agent target. We were talking about trades. Love Tyler O'Neill. I don't think there's a player that fits what the Reds need better than Tyler O'Neill. Maybe Suarez, but now that we think Suarez is gone, yeah, I mean, a guy I think you get on a couple years, could play, I think, above average defense in left field, right-handed bat. Love Tyler O'Neill. I would love to see that. He's probably my number one fit guy, in terms of free agents. Seeing some always Trevor Bauer talk. Look, Trevor Bauer got traded because Terry Francona was sick of him. So if you think Trevor Bauer's coming back to the Reds, it's not happening. Like, legitimately, Terry Francona was sick of Trevor Bauer. They traded him to the Cincinnati Reds. So it's not happening.
Do you think anybody signs him this year? I guess he's still going to be kind of shadow banned.
I don't know. I would say no. I mean, like, if you told me I have to bet one way or the other, I'd say no. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. I don't know. It just felt like if no one's got desperate enough at some point last year, you get a year further and he becomes a year older. I probably not, but yeah.
Yeah, I kind of am in the same boat as you. It seems like he would be an obvious choice if somebody needed pitching help to just pick up. So there's got to be just some hesitation. I think no legal scholar or anything, but from my understanding, he got kind of off the hook for his legal stuff. But there seems to just be a stink around his reputation or something, or maybe he's a clubhouse issue. I could kind of maybe see his personality rubbing people the wrong way. I'm just speculating on that, but it just seems weird to me that like no one's taking a chance on this guy. Like, I mean, just he won the Cy Young not long ago, and now he's just never is going to pitch in MLB again. It seems like, but it's always interesting to talk about. All year last year, I had buddies of mine, telling me Trevor Bauer, and I'm like, he's just sitting there waiting, pitching in Japan or wherever he was, but or was it Mexico? Japan? I can't remember.
Mexico, yeah, Mexico.
Yeah, not in MLB.
I think
but yeah,
I think it's just a combination of everything. I think it's the public backlash and the clubhouse rumors. And I think it's just always a mixture that just no one says, I'm not touching that. Do you think Stu will be back? I think there's a good chance Stewart is either traded or non-tendered. Love Stuart Fairchild. He's getting a little more expensive. He's out of options. I think there's a good chance. I know he didn't have a good year at all, but I think Blake Dunn has the potential to fill Stuart Fairchild's role and maybe be even better at it, at least offensively. So yeah, if you had to Nick Kirby bet, I would bet that Fairchild's not on the Reds next year. But I'm not like 100% confident either.
I feel like he is going to be on the roster now. Do I think he's their best option at any of the outfield spots? Probably not. But from a defensive kind of substitution type role or maybe a pinch running situation, I think he brings pretty good value. But yeah, man, some of those catches he had last year in center field, going up against the wall, pretty awesome. But I don't know. I can see him staying in the organization. I just don't know if that's necessarily a guy they're banking on to be huge production anyway.
Yeah, it's just being out of options, and the fact too he's gotten hurt a lot. And for a guy that doesn't play every day that gets hurt a lot, that you kind of I don't know. I think there's a good chance he's gone. Always get a good question about Benson. Benson could spend the entire year in AAA next year if he doesn't figure it out. So that's your plan A. With your plan for Benson is to start him in AAA unless he comes to camp and plays really well and a spot opens up. But he can spend the whole year in AAA. He can spend the whole next 2 years in AAA. So you're in no rush with Will Benson. I do not think you need that 40-man roster spot so bad that you have to cut him. I think you can give a spot to Will Benson. I think he's deserving of that. Because again, he's had one really good season in the big leagues and one really terrible season in the big leagues. 2025 is his chance to prove which way he is, one way or the other. It would be insane to try to get rid of Will Benson and not let him try to figure it out in AAA.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think they can go through a whole year like they had last year of him trying to figure out kind of his swing and get hot like he did last year. I mean, he was, I think he finished towards the end of the season, even, top 10, top 5 in the league in strikeouts. So if going down to AAA to get right is kind of the answer. I know he did that in 2023, right? He came up, initially opening day roster, they sent him down, he came back and had his best part of the year. So I don't know. I feel bad for the guy. I think he's a really good guy. It seems like fits in with the clubhouse pretty well. But I just don't think if this team wants to contend or try to contend in the Central, and beyond that, you just can't deal with the same season that he had last year and right field and things like that. So tough spot, but to your point, it's nice to have options.
Yeah, I got a question about Fraley being non-tendered. I don't think Fraley's going to get non-tendered. I think there's a chance he gets traded. I think he still has enough value for whatever his contract's going to be. I think his arbitration estimate was like $5 million off the top of my head. I don't have it up. Jake Fraley's a guy that everything went wrong for him last year, and he still ended up with a 716 OPS, 95 WRC plus. Again, I kind of think that I lean towards keeping Jake Fraley unless there's someone that's willing to give something up. I just think everything went wrong for him, and he still had a well above average on base percentage. You have to think his power is going to come back in some form. I lean towards keeping him and riding it out. And to be honest, I would love to see you go out and get a premium left fielder that's a good defender, and you have Fraley in right field, and you have him platoon with maybe Spencer Steer. And then you have Friedel in center field, and I like to have a good option as a backup. I think I'm willing to. I don't know where are you at on Fraley?
I actually like Fraley a lot. I think if you can get him healthy, obviously for a full year, and having him in your lineup, I think it's. I hope they keep him. I don't see them just non-tendering. I guess so that I'm all for keeping him around. I think especially with the outfield that we have right now, he's one of your better options. So if they don't keep him around, then we better be looking for some outside help, I guess is how I look at it. So at this point, I think you got to make plans to have him play a lot going into next year.
Got a question about Carrick says we need 4 more players off the 40-man. I don't know the exact number on that. I think Carrick is speculating based on who he thinks is going to be Rule 5 protected. But who he asking who would the Reds take off of that? I'm looking up now. I think Jabot's maybe got a chance. He just didn't pitch at all. I don't know if I'd love to give him up. Casey Legamina is definitely one of the guys that's on the cut list, in my opinion. Lyon Richardson might be getting close. Zulueta is on there. Again, the Reds also could make trades. Maybe the Reds could trade. Maybe the Reds trade Candelario. There's a spot. I already mentioned Fairchild. Hurtubise is maybe an option. I think Reese Hines has a potential to get traded this offseason. That could potentially be a spot. That's probably your guys. I don't think Weimer is getting cut. I don't think Benson's getting cut. I definitely don't think Blake Dunn's getting cut. Anyone that you think I might have missed there?
I don't know. My immediate thoughts are just basically any one of those kind of bullpen arms that they called up for, at any point towards the season last year. But yeah, I don't know where the exact number stands. I thought I saw it was at maybe 39 earlier today, but that was maybe before the, moves took place. But I don't know. I just think, at our current roster, we have a lot of kind of bullpen guys that I just don't think are, super high quality big leaguers. And, you could see that kind of being the way they go with it.
Well, Luis May is going to have to be added as a Rule 5 protection. Tyler Callahan's a guy I probably would like to see get added. He's kind of on the fence. Acuna is probably a guy that's going to get added, another pitcher as well. So that's 3 spots. That's probably what I think Carrick is talking about. There might be someone else that I'm missing that needs to be added to Rule 5. Nestor Laurent is Rule 5 eligible. Just made it to Dayton, but he was the pitcher of the month or year or something down in Daytona. Was incredible for the Reds. I don't think they protect him, but I think that's what Carrick's talking about with those spots. So they might be 39 now, but it needs to be down to like 35. And that's not even counting players that you want to add this offseason. That's why I do think you look through this roster. I do think there's going to be players get traded off this roster. As I mentioned before, I think Ashcraft's a guy that I could see getting moved. I think that Fairchild, as I mentioned, I think Hines, I think Steer has the potential to get moved. That's kind of what I think. There's going to be some trades of big league players just to kind of open up some spots and give the Reds some options to bring in some new players as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I think we're still, a lot of moves today, obviously, for the Reds, but I think there's still going to be a lot of moving pieces now that the season's finally over. So probably, heck, by this time next week, we could probably have some more clarity to it, I think. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
All right, I'm going to do one last question, then we're going to wrap this up. Really appreciate everyone joining in the chat. Sean asked, Burns making the opening day roster? I don't think so. I think your best case scenario for him is the Paul Skeens plan, where he makes a handful of starts at AAA. If he absolutely dominates, he gets called up mid-May. That's your best case scenario. I think if I had to bet, I bet he pitches in 2025. I'll set the over-under, though, right now. And I'm going to say I was really good on this before because I remember when we started Chatterbox Reds in 2023, our fearless leader, Trace Fowler, said, Nick, what's the over-under on Ellie De La Cruz's call-up? And I said June 1st, and I was really close. So let's see if the crystal ball is here. I'm going to say July 1st for Burns.
I'd have to go over on that one. I just don't see the organization rushing it.
Okay.
I could see a later in the year call up, but at this point, I think I just don't know if they're gonna. Just based on the Reds, I mean, even a guy like Rhett Lauder, who's pitching lights out, they just seemingly like to be very methodical in the progression of extending them all through the ranks. So I don't know. I would be shocked. I think if he is called up, we're probably dealing with some pitching injuries to the guys on our 40-man roster. But I would have to go over if I had to bet.
I'm going to say under. I'm going to say I think he probably is right before July 1st. Lauder was the number 7 pick. Burns is number 2. So he's obviously got that pedigree built in. Lauder had a really rough stop at AA where he had a 4.31 ERA. I don't think Burns is going to struggle in the minor leagues. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his command is all out of whack, and that's always something you can't really predict. But if his command is decent, you have to think with his stuff, he's just going to absolutely obliterate these minor league hitters, being a guy that just pitched in the SEC, dominated. So I think it's going to be quick. That's my prediction, but we shall see. All right, Austin, any final thoughts?
No, good to be talking some baseball though on a Friday night. Like we said, we didn't expect doing this, but it's got me excited for the Red season. And then I got to realize, we're months and seasons away, winter and everything else. So it'll be here before you know it, but it's getting me interested at least late in the year.
Wow, as someone who does a recaps after every spring training game, trust me, it'll get here quickly. I think we're 16 weeks away from spring training games, so yeah, it'll get here quick, and I'm excited. No matter how this offseason goes, even if the Reds don't do much, I would be disappointed if they don't do much. But I think no matter what, they're going to have a really good team next year, and they got a team that I think can really compete. They got a lot of guys I think are really going to bounce back, and I'm excited. So thanks as always to everyone watching on a Friday night. Thank you for spending your Friday night with us. Thank you for listening in podcast form. I want to make sure I tell you about all of our other programming here at Chatterbox Sports. We, of course, have Chatterbox Bearcats. They'll be live after whoever UC plays on Saturday, if they do. I know that college basketball starts on Monday. They're going to be live after UC's game on Monday as well. So live after every UC basketball and football game. Chatterbox Bengals. They are live on YouTube. Jakob Junis live during the entire game, full game live stream. So be sure to check that out. Jacob does a great job. And then Chatterbox Bengals, 3 episodes a week in podcast form everywhere that you get that. What else do we got? We got Off the Bench, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. No show on Monday because I'm coming down to Cincinnati this weekend for the Athletes in Action tournament that Chatterbox Sports is broadcasting. It's going to be on the Athletes in Action YouTube page. So 3 games. Liberty women against Valparaiso, Liberty men against Valparaiso, and Florida Atlantic, the Final Four team against Indiana State, the NIT runner-up last year. So really cool to have that. So episode notes in the episode notes in the podcast form on YouTube. They're in the description below. Links to all of our other content. So appreciate if you check that out. If you haven't subscribed to Chatterbox Reds wherever you're listening to this podcast, make sure you do that right now. And, of course, like the stream and make sure you're subscribed to Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Hit the bell in the top right corner so you're notified anytime that we go live. All right, well, have a fantastic weekend. We will talk again soon as news breaks again. Go Reds.